yet to be developed.
Yep. Sounds good. All right. And so without further ado, we will dive right into our facilities update. And I believe Trevor, you're on first. Did you want to lead
Let's
with
go
any
Matt,
words?
let's go Matt first.
Matt first, okay.
Okay,
Yeah.
sounds good.
Matt'll tell you what you can get for different price points, and Trevor will say, for the low price of X, here's what that will cost.
Oh, I see how you guys are.
Yes.
Here's all that's possible.
Here's
Here's
all that's possible.
possible.
We're gonna dream first.
Like the Christmas list versus
Yes, exactly.
Ah, yes.
The magic clicker.
Yeah, thank you so
are,
much.
you're welcome.
Okay. All right, so when we met last time, you all kind of had some ideas on some different variations we should be considering. And so we've looked at those, so we have a few different scenarios to look at. And we have done a first pass at looking at updating the pricing for the various projects within there. And so if we want to dive into that detail later, I'm happy to do that. And we can kind of go through a discussion. So this is what we looked at previously, which is a recap of what we had in the previous bond. I won't highlight that at this point, go through any detail on that, I mean. We have identified a number of different possible projects. And so in the scenarios, you're going to see a mixture of different variations of combinations of these projects in the different scenarios. And so that we can discuss that as we start to think about which direction you're leaning. I'll highlight something on the very bottom, which is possible state match allocation. So if you remember from the previous slide, in the previous bond, we had allocated $7 million of our anticipated state match to support these projects, and the remainder of that state match we had left unallocated. And what I did in these scenarios is I have reduced that amount a little bit. Just assuming, depending on which scenario we go with, then we'll refine your updated state match. But at this point, it made sense to assume a reduction. But we'll see what the real answer is later. There's a couple things. So each of these I have updated to kind of do the best I could to look at our current inflationary kind of context and kind of the updated schedule. And so some of the numbers are a little bit updated from what we looked at previously, but we have the new elementary school. We have two. Makes sense so far? Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's keep going. So then version 1 of Orting High School is adding 4 science labs, a health science lab, which also incorporates the training room as part of that. So, and then you have the engineering and robotics lab, remodeling the culinary arts, and remodeling what is now the makerspace into an agri-science lab. And so essentially what that is you can see, I think, there we go, you can see the blue, no, that's a cursor, trying to point to the blue circle there next to your current gymnasium, and basically in between in the grass area of what is currently the playground. So that's the location of where that would go. And then in the second version, you can see that mostly this is the same. The only thing that's added is the new gym, which basically would be located on the opposite side, basically where the current wrestling gym is. So that's the building that's been identified for a long time that needs to come down. So this larger version of a project in high school includes that.
So you said that would become the main gym, and the current gym becomes
Current gym
the auxiliary
stays,
gym.
correct. So that's different than when we had the project last time where we were replacing that as well. So in this case, we're leaving that, and we're not doing, any other work within the existing building over there. Okay, so then let's run through the scenarios. So,
I'm sorry,
yes?
I'm sorry. There was a question about one of the walls on the current main gym, about it not being seismically sound, or?
Okay, so part of the reason we were replacing 1977 gym was because trying to upgrade that to meet current seismic codes was really not going to be possible. Part of the reason we had to do that was because we were doing a lot of work all around it and connecting to that in a way that sort of said we have to do this, we need to upgrade everything and try to get this building to current code, and that would not be able to be upgraded.
Okay.
And so in this case, we're kind of, we have a more limited scope, and I believe we can approach this where we can leave that for now and allow that to be addressed and upgraded in the future.
That makes sense.
So separate completely, right? Not tied to
We-
the 77
it would-
gym?
Correct, we would do nothing
Okay.
that's right tied to the 77
Okay.
gym. And part of, yeah, that's essentially what
Okay.
we do. Yep. And part of it is just sort of the way the building code looks at new additions, alterations, and sort of then there's some thresholds, and we would not
Yeah.
need to do that, so. Good question on that, though. So in this scenario, so this is the first scenario at approximately $90 million. You can see that the major project is a new elementary school, and that's going to be consistent in all the scenarios. And then you'll see that in here we have included the portable classrooms at the high. Next scenario jumps us up a little bit to about 117 million. The main addition here is adding what we're calling high school addition version 1. And so that is the addition that focuses in on science and CTE improvements at the high school. And everything else stayed the same. You can kind of go through these and decide, no, we do or do not want something else, and that's clearly, obviously, any of those changes can be made. And then scenario 4, when we talked last time, we thought, yeah, about 130 million was about our top kind of possibility we wanted to consider. When I added everything up, I really couldn't get this to just be at 130. It pushed us over a bit. So if we really want this scenario to be 130, we're gonna have to talk and figure out, well, what would that be? How would we get there? So I think that's it for the 4 scenarios. They kind of bookend sort of a range for us. And again, like I say, I think we can pull up a spreadsheet if needed, if we want to dive into any of that, so depending how you want to structure your conversation. Or do you want some additional information from Trevor first?
You want it all.
Have a discussion
And
with
then-
all the
and
discussion,
then
with all the
talk.
information.
I would, do you have questions? Melissa, you have questions? Mike? Or do you want to dive into the numbers?
I think we dive into the numbers.
Okay.
Can I hand out a couple? I brought them, so might as well
Sure.
hand them out. I think if you don't mind taking one and passing down. I took the liberty to print one of the models on big piece of paper because I struggled to see it on small. So if you can take one of those and pass it down. But there are multiple, thank you very much.
Are these,
It's the same presentation as what's up on the screen.
okay. Melissa, in exchange for you being at Cannon Beach while we're all here, we get paper copies, you switch.
And you all can zoom in also, probably.
Yeah.
Well, great. Thank you very much for the opportunity to be here. President Thibodeau, members of the board, Superintendent Katzenbuehler, thank you for being here, for allowing me to be here. Let me go through the presentation. We're going to touch on a couple different scenarios. Try not to make your head spin too much. The numbers are there for you to kind of synthesize over time. But what we've tried to do is take a look and kind of what Matt said, bookend some of the options that go along with the different scenarios that Matt and Liz have drawn up. So with that, we'll jump right in. Election dates are there for your record. If you are thinking about an election, a possible election in 2024, The 4 opportunities are February, April, August, November, and I left off the most important column. Sorry, I will circle this back around with the resolution due dates. The resolutions are due mid-December for a February election, for example. Quite a few pages here, just of reference, just to get your minds around lawn planning, but just to give you a sense of comparable tax rates for all of the school districts in Pierce and King counties. From Bethel, ranked from the highest tax rate to the lowest at Skykomish. Really a lot of different community-specific economies that are ranked in this list, different size of assessed values and different compositions of the levies that are on the books for those school districts. Some capital, one has a transportation right now, and the mix is displayed on page 5. So you're near the bottom of that list right now. Looking at districts of similar assessed value, so kind of the sweet spot, plus or minus 3 billion, to show you across the state, ranked from highest to lowest tax rates, to show where you land in comparative positioning to your peers across the state with similar tax bases. Debt capacity, the box in the middle right-hand side, assessed value times 5%, take away any debt that's on the books, leaves 160 million, 160 is the maximum amount of bonds that you could sell in calendar 2023, and the models that we will look at next are below that number. Assessed value, really again the main determinant in your tax rates. Your assessed value has grown very, very quickly over the last few years. 10% in 2020, 16% the next year, 25% in 22, another 25%. We've received preliminary assessed values, and as of now, we are expecting 4.8% growth in 2024. That number will change as new revisions come out as we get closer to the end of the year, but we do have a starting point. We do have some visibility, so that's nice to be able to incorporate into the future modeling. Right? It's, things are slowing down on the fringes, right? As mortgage rates have increased dramatically, it's put some downward pressure on housing markets. The raw data of assessed value from 2002 through 24, the new construction component broken out in the second column from the right, some very large increases to your tax base, starting in 21 of 126 million, 174, 206, 186, that new growth as we're experiencing and you've seen, you've lived it every day, is significant, and we expect that to maintain at a fairly high pace as we go forward in time, unless there is a major economic correction. So, nitty-gritty here. We've looked at similar models in the past. Let me reorient you towards what we're looking at here. The upper left-hand portion looks at assumptions into the bond model. The rating, we are not considering phase 2 like we did in the past in this model. I just want to show you and kind of the compare and contrast. Okay, so ultimately what we're looking at here in this model is $130 million, single authorization. We're not factoring in a future potential phase 2 authorization, keeping the tax rate as low as possible. Below, kind of in the middle left-hand side, are the anticipated or projected principal and interest payments for that $130 million broken into 3 discrete bond sales. An estimate right in the middle where that yellow box is, the middle column, EP&O levy, estimates of your operating tax bill. Remember before it was 1133, that increase in '25. This one's $1,558. So bigger tax bill to create that level tax rate, including proposed authorization number 2. Okay, have I lost anyone? Maybe, maybe not. Okay, well, I'm going to be here all night. I can answer questions. Single authorization, $115 million. We looked at single authorization 130. Remember that tax rate differential is 182. This tax rate differential is 163. Okay, and there's going to be a pattern here where it's about 20 cents for every $15 million. So this is a little bit less tax rate increase. Remember the first single authorization at 130 was 1133. This one's 1014. 2014. Okay, borrow a little bit less, tax bill's a little bit less. And again, I Googled kind of average home value in Orting, and I came up with 538, 408. Seemed reasonable. We can change that number. It's in Excel. 115 million, 2 authorizations, $2.34 differential between today's tax rate and what we would anticipate in 2025. That tax bill increase at $1,458, $1,458. And then single authorization, 100 million, gets us to that differential of 144. $1.44 tax rate change.
What does it mean to the district if we chose not to do that and just did a single authorization? What exactly does that mean?
That means, most likely, if you chose the single authorization route, then in 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years, whenever the next need needs to be met via a bond election, we would be stacking those bond payments on top of the bonds that we hope to sell starting next year, if you do go out to the vote in 2024. So it would, instead of having a level tax rate, we would have it plateau and step up. And there's some tools that we have to try and mitigate that increase. But think of it as you're getting authorization for a mortgage. Maybe in 2024, you've got your principal and interest payments locked in, and let's say those are 20-year bonds. Let's make the math easy. And in 10 years, you go out for the next authorization. We're going to be stacking the next mortgage on top of the remaining 10 years of payments that you locked in, maybe in 2024.
Okay.
Does that help?
And what would be the negative if we chose to do the multiple authorization and then didn't get a bond passed for several more years?
Yeah, so there would be a step down in the payment structure, and the tax rates would be, have that same pattern. So you would have possibly a valley where tax rates dropped, and then they spiked back up with a new authorization. And we can have that be a, kind of a binary event where the tax rate drops as low as it can to accommodate the future authorization, or we can, have it kind of slowly march down, so the risk of that next authorization not happening at the exact correct moment doesn't cause as much disruption.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, great question. It's a little bit of pay now versus pay later.
But that valley is what we're experiencing now. basically, bonds paid off, and
Yeah,
now we're in
yes,
that valley, so we'd be in that valley again if we, potentially,
potentially,
depending on the timing.
yes, yeah. Timing's obviously very important in life.
Which that was a part of our previous bond, message that was hard for people to wrap their minds around. So if we can minimize that. that's
That
helpful.
confusion, yes, yes. And I think, you know, there are immediate needs that need to be tackled and probably in the most cost-effective way to the taxpayer. And then you being able to come back and promises made, promises kept, being able to deliver, showing the benefits of the new projects, and then tackling, you know, these type of issues during that second phase, I think would put you in a stronger position. You know, for topics that resonate very well with voters. We've seen that for years, and the voter survey data that we just released the last week or two emphasizes that and backs what you're seeing here.
Would your recollection be that to be true, consistent across the age group demographics? Younger voters to older voters as well?
Yeah, a little bit more propensity on the conservative older voter is really interested in the CTE topic, but it resonates really well across the spectrum of demographics. So just a couple things to highlight as you're
Yeah. We
marching
had
through time.
Our undergraduate shared that our average age was 56, which was surprising since these initiatives really impact a lot of our younger families. And we saw CTE come through in that survey data for that age group as well.
Interesting,
So
yeah.
that was good. So if we can move into that.
I'm surprised that the tax rate over time is so low, because isn't that, like, are you asking them in the survey, is that a concern, tax rate over time, or?
That was our survey.
Yeah, that
was
survey.
Yeah, that's yours, that's your data, yeah.
The responses showed that wasn't as much of a concern in our local survey, but my anecdotal street data feedback would say that's never been true since I've been in public education. Or any time a tax increase has been on the table, that's been met with reluctance or resistance in the community.
And, you know, from empirical evidence, you know, survey research, and then kind of just boots on the ground, professional experience, you know, really where I live and try and tee you up is creating something that looks, where are the graphics? Something that looks like this, where we have tax, you know, a semblance of tax stability. There's going to be an immediate increase. There's just no way around it, right? You're going from zero to something.
Right.
That's a big jump. But trying to keep it stable so folks can budget and know that there's some semblance of stability is, I mean, that's where I live. This is what I try and do for everyone that I build these models for across the state. Right, so we try to take care of that last kind of important issue on that upper right-hand side of tax rate not increasing over time.
And it's always, you know, that's ideal. I can see that. You know, my budget, I would look at it the same way. I'd be all like, I just want that to just kind of right there. And yeah, it's.
But look, I guarantee you I'll be incorrect, right? I never give you all the right answer. I never do. It's the beauty of my job. I'm like the weatherman. But look at how it's ebbed and flowed over time. Right? Assessed value is the big driver. Again, the years aren't on there, unfortunately, but right, Great Recession, when you see negative assessed value, right, the plan blows up. And we're seeing negative assessed value right now in King County. I just got my little 3x5 card, and my assessed value is going down 7.3%.
Guys went down in Arnie.
And so, it kind of blows up the models, right?
Right.
And so you have to roll with the punches, be flexible, but you know, there are these moments where
Scale up in the near term. So when you're talking about the top concern about being affordable or entry point, I hope that gives you some good consideration of how you might respond to that publicly, of being being tax wise or tax conscious, because each of those scenarios offer you some talking point in that regard. How much to the degree depends where you decide to go.
My mind is wanting to go kind of back to the projects and then look at where our feelings lie in terms of which package, and then we match it up with the numbers. That's where my thoughts are for any other.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, ma'am.
In the past, have you known school districts to start with a higher bond and drop it down? And has it made a big difference?
That's an interesting question. We have tested it via survey research, and there is no difference to the average respondent on, elasticity of pricing. There are many instances where reducing the total cost has been successful, and many where it has not. It's really defining the need and defining what are the benefits that these projects will fulfill. When I start to have conversations with folks talking about the fine tuning of, whether it's a nickel higher or lower in tax rate, it's probably an anti-tax person, and I've already lost. Right, that, this is not fine-tuned enough for us to be exact. There are so many variables that we've discussed and highlighted, but just, there's some facts that if we ask for this bond, ask for this new mortgage, ask for this loan, and going from zero to something will be a tax increase for the taxes that you all control, right? You can't control all the other taxes. You've got the bond and the EP&O, those are your levers. But it's not by any stretch a magic bullet to go out at 150, hear no, I'll just ratchet it back down and have a yes vote happen. Conversely, you can say, as a hypothetical taxpayer, oh, we got them. They didn't really need that much. And I've done my job by putting the screws to them.
Yeah. Makes
They
sense.
weren't trustworthy the first time. Metro districts, they have a cadence of being more active on the capital side, so we have to build these multi-phase plans. Others where I feel like the need is more urgent and maybe there's more pressure on the tax situation. Something like a single authorization may be better, and it may be better in a situation like this. I might be overstepping my bounds, and but with the results that we saw at the ballot box, I think having the ability to keep the tax bill as low as possible may suit you well moving forward, and then we tackle the next authorization as the growth comes, right? If the growth is going to come like we anticipate, The tax rate's gonna decrease, that new construction's gonna be additive, and maybe we can dovetail in authorization 2 with minimal pain.
That was a very great explanation, thank you, that helped me a
But
lot.
that's, again, no right or wrong answer.
No.
Sorry if I'm,
No,
Ed probably wants to kick me under the table. But it's, you know, an example, it's a different, different root cause, but forever, Pasco, fastest growing district in the state, right? 700 new kids every year. Like, that's a big elementary that they need to build every year, right? Not all those kids are elementary, but just in the context, right? Relatively small assessed value compared to their other 2 neighbors in the Tri-Cities. Debt capacity was an issue, right? They needed, your debt capacity is 160. They were always bumping up against it. So they were not able to have a multi-phased approach. It was always trying to catch up. And not until this last cycle, so far, they were the only ones that have passed on the ballot this year. There are 7 more trying in November, so keep your fingers crossed. Their assessed value reached a certain point where it was basically at equilibrium with the other bi-cities of the Tri-Cities, and we were able to install that multi-phased approach. Maybe you're sort of like a Pasco right now, for a different reason.
I was thinking about that second phase, and when we were looking at this before, we were saying, we were looking at our assessed valuation and the maximum kind of debt capacity, and we had said, you're gonna continue to be in a fairly high need situation for quite some time. And so, what I'm kind of just pondering in my head, trying to think, if we plan for 150 million, say, and we, 6 years from now, or whenever that is, we're considering another bond, we're gonna, you know, to keep it at a flat rate, you need to stick within something right around that 150. If you end up saying, oh my gosh, our needs are 200, then you're still not gonna be flat.
Yeah, it's gonna spike.
the other thing, I've been waiting to say this, is that, so, talking about second phase, talking about the gotcha statement that really resonated to some of those people are just gonna be no, but this, what we decide on for the first phase, knowing that we're going to keep needing things more, we need to make it definitely be promises made, promises kept, because if we make some decisions and go without some things, when we get to the second phase, we're gonna screw ourselves.
Yeah.
And the reason why I've been thinking a lot, and I told this to Ed, is that when we talked about not doing one of the high school gyms this time, okay? So then when you get to the second phase, all of a sudden people realize, no gym, what happens to volleyball? What happens to basketball? What happens to wrestling? And then they're really mad at us because we didn't plan so that those things would be able to continue on. And I'm really afraid that, I know we have to make some compromises, but we have to be very careful about the ones we make so that we don't bite ourselves the next time around.
And I'm gonna say a little bit on that one, if we did the one gym now, right? On the next vote that's gonna come, on the next bond, they're gonna say, well, you guys just did the gym.
Yeah.
Right? So what's that outcome at that point, right? Because you're gonna be all like, okay, well, now we gotta redo this other gym. And they're gonna be all like,
I think that's
We
an
just
excellent
redid
point,
one.
for sure, is that when the scope has a high school in it, sometimes people don't look at the real specific details. It has to be very clear in the scope, especially if you're multiple bonds, is that it has to be very clear in the scope that it's CTE at the high school, and then no, that's as clear as it can be. And then the next bond would be gym.
Gyms.
So I have heard that comment before when it is, you know, addition or some terminology that's not as clear.
I think that maybe, maybe the way we approach it might make the difference, because I was talking to someone that does a lot of campaigns, and so like, let's take the gym, for example, and being clear. If we went into that gym and showed pictures of what that gym is doing right now and shows the age, I'm not just talking like we need a new gym because it's getting old, I'm talking being very specific about what's happening to it, and then show what it's gonna be afterwards, and that and show the other gym and say, in future years, we'll have to do this too. But I think, I don't know how you argue with that. You know, I could maybe if I'm hearing, we need a new gym, I might be thinking, okay, we need, why sports, you know, or whatever. But if you're showing me a gym that's cracking and falling apart, and the kids are in it, and you're showing me actual pictures of that, I don't know how I get around that. I mean, how do I, with good conscience, say, okay, just let the kids go ahead and play in a crack gym? It could fall down, but it might not.
Can we actually use it right now with the floor? Or are we not even using it because of the floor?
Not using it and not sure how long we'll be able to use it, or what it'll take to get, when I'm saying using it, we're talking about the 50s gymnasium. The floor has once again swollen, it's been an issue over time with moisture.
And it's
Yeah.
been multiple
So
times this has happened.
the most recent conversation I had, which was late last week with our athletic director, is that did not foresee it to be usable for basketball or volleyball for practice, and likely not wrestling, but I don't know yet through Curtis's lens what can be fixed or when.
And the Ording Wrestling Booster Club is looking to find a raised floor that they can, I guess, put over the top of it, which I was going.
Like WWE.
Yeah, so what I'm saying is that this is gonna be obvious to the public. This is gonna be, this is gonna be an impact now, not just an impact later. So, I think it's an immediate issue.
I think that showing them just how be really specific in everything that we're asking for, and because sometimes we do ask for it, and then we do a better job than we probably should about trying to fix it any way we can, and no one sees that, so they just see, oh, well, they're still, you know, they don't have any portables out in the parking lot yet, or they don't have, and so they don't see the consequences, like, you know, that are there.
There's some things that are heavy on my mind. One is, I think from a board perspective, we're not the group that has to be convinced of the need. We've seen it plain as day, we're living it with our students and staff, and our parents are pretty well connected to that story as well. I think our challenge is getting the community to recognize the weight of our overcrowding issues and the conditions of our building. So that's on my mind. The other thing is, we heard loud and clear twice that not enough votes were in favor of the package we put forward and the money we were asking for. And so what we've heard it now twice. If we go again so soon as February, when we have the best opportunity to pass a bond, then it's got to be something different that indicates to both the community and our school community that we listened and we're trying again. It doesn't take away from any of those needs that still exist. So going back to something Liz had said about not complicating that message and what we're asking for, and keeping, like if we ask for a high school CTE this time, but we add a gym, and then when all of a sudden we've got to add another gym later, and we just got a new gym at the high school, why would I support that again? Like, I really want to be cautious of muddying that message and asking for, like, what's the one critical thing we need, and then start to develop that pattern of delivering what we promised on time, on budget, and start to build. We have a long history of failed bond attempts, and most people who have moved into this area don't they haven't lived that journey with us, they're just coming into it now. And so I really just want to, let's get all the projects are critical,
Yeah.
but the most critical things, let's get that passed at no matter what we ask for, it's gonna feel like a lot to the community, but at a agreed upon rate, and then let's plan for what's next.
I find it interesting though that the average age was 54. That's not those are not our elementary parents, so.
Nope.
56.
58
or
and 1 and
Okay,
60
they're not, I mean, our
and the other.
elementary parents are typically in their 40s.
It's
I mean,
the
I'm not-
grandparents.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so it's like, so we really, I guess, haven't reached our parents that well because they're not voting. You know, it's
I don't
like,
know what the general voting, I mean, the general voting age is not 21 in terms of the average voting age across the state, so I don't know how that plays into your survey data. I'm not, but it's in my mind anyway as something.
Younger parents too tired.
I don't know, but,
Maybe, I don't know.
yeah.
I think there's something to that. They're juggling a lot, dance class, t-ball, new kids,
Yeah.
you know.
The data point, I mean, there's a lot of things to consider, and it all can't happen. And this board spent a year and a half with a very big committee analyzing this situation and put those needs out front, and those were the top of many other needs that will not get addressed in some cases for the next 10 or 12 years. But across all of the respondents, the number one issue, which included many parents, mostly parents, more than the retirees, the number one issue, if you look in the bottom right, was to minimize that tax rate increase. So keeping that in mind, I think the broader scale is looking for what accomplishes that for the most affordable price point. And I hope those packages give you some ideas of what that could look like. And it's a darned if you do, darned if you don't, because you know whatever you don't touch now will cost more down the road, absolutely. But if you put too much on the table, the feedback overwhelmingly says it's hurting us, and so what's that minimal price point? And so we just share all that data, just in appreciation for the decision you have, because there's no probably right answer that meets all constituent needs. So what's that compromise that we think can get us over the hump of 60%? That a majority would resonate with, and I think that if you follow your hearts and your heads in that context, we will fight like heck to try to get it to go through.
And I think the economy's even slowing down even more, so that's it's gonna make people with their taxes even tighter, right? They're gonna be on it,
Yeah, I wondered a little bit, I think I asked Ed about that, going from 4.68 growth now and then jumping back out to 10. Like, is that a realistic, that seems like a big jump.
Yeah, we analyzed, if not
Yeah.
for new growth this year, we would have receded in assessed valuation. So we would be less than what we're at today, which would drop that price point authorization ability. So when we're looking out, we have literally mapped, not for the things we don't know about, but for all new construction, we've mapped on current assessed valuation, what's happening each year through that forecast using the numbers we got from developers. So we're pretty confident the net average per year is about a 7% growth just from new construction. So that 10%, as Trevor and I were trying to put our pencils together, that leaves without the new growth 3% per year, which the 20-year average has been about 4.8, 4.9% growth per year. So we always want to lead with our numbers in a conservative way, because just like the promises made, promises kept, we want to beat whatever we say. We don't want to create an era of mistrust. So I'd be pretty confident at that 10% just from what we see. Now, okay, there is some risk, of course. You know, construction could stop altogether, but we're getting our feedback from our developers. We don't think that's likely. In fact, we had one of the biggest 1-month increases in impact fees. I put that in your update for tomorrow. Just this last month, over $200,000 of impact fees coming in from mostly the Tahali area. So we don't see signs, even in this slowdown and high interest rates, that the construction is stopping. It's still going. So on that basis, I think that 10% would be a reasonable forecast just when we think about the impact of new growth.
To put it into perspective, kind of the middle of the right-hand side are compound annual growth rates. So over 20 years, your assessed value has grown at an average of 9.19%. And you can see, think of the hockey stick parabolic move we've seen over the last few years. The shorter the time period, the substantial increase in that growth rate, but 19% on average over the last 5 years. But again, that's a tough one to gauge, right? There's a lot of factors that go into that 10%. So thanks for bringing that up. It's something that Ed and I have mapped out. But again,
Trust your math.
there are assumptions.
It's more than I trust my own.
I'm sure we're wrong. It's just we hope to be wrong in a right way.
Or not wrong by very much.
Or not wrong by very much.
Either one would be fine.
Yeah, I think that's one of the hard things for our community to wrap our minds around, because it's not every day that they go through to Holly or even drive up the hill of Sunrise. So while they feel the growth and they feel it while they're sitting on 162 and our schools are feeling it, if you're not here, you're not grasping it all the way. Okay. Should we talk packages? So just to be clear,
You want to switch back to those?
yeah, but the outcome that you're looking for is which direction we're leaning towards in terms of which package and what dollar amount.
Yeah,
So-
I think we got some ideas on the table for our team, really. So here's your timeline. By November 2nd, we would hope to have a draft of a resolution for your review and discussion at that work session. And we could talk about outreach, set strategies and ways to communicate and such, and get your ideas on that. Because the consideration of action happens the very next week. So November 9th would be your consideration of action. So to meet that timeline, to have a draft for you to look at on the 2nd, we would need that in your hands the week before, which means we need to know roughly where you're going a couple weeks before that, so we could work with council to have that drafted. So you really have a couple weeks or so to have that conversation and think about where you're at and provide feedback to President Thibodeau, and then we can move from there. That would be my hope, somewhere about mid-October, that Director Thibodeau could say, yep, here's what we want you to do, and we will move forward and have that ready for you in November. I don't think we need a firm call tonight from my perspective.
I did want to ask one question. By this time last year, we knew what the big issue was from the people that came to the board meetings, and that was the lunchrooms because of the overcrowding. I haven't heard about things this year, except for parking for high school. So are there other things that families are complaining, contacting us about, like overcrowding in classrooms, overcrowding at the high school? I don't know. I'm just seeing what the climate is.
Good question. We have added to our overcapacity problem since we last looked at the data. So if you remember, PTR was about 44% overcapacity, and that was 660 kids. Now we're at 711. We have, I'll say, somewhat mitigated the lunchroom time, and somewhat, because one of our food service, I'd love to bring and recognize her, Dawn, had this idea to create 2 different salad bars and 2 different lines, and they built a milk crate wall, and that's actually accelerating some of the service time. So we are not, I don't think, getting that full 30 minutes that law calls for of uninterrupted time to eat, but we're getting more than some of the 16 or 12-minute windows we had without the 2 lines. So we're not ideal or what law says, but we're not as tight. But mind you, that school, before this new one is even built, will be 300 more kids yet. So there's no way to fix that problem without a permanent solution. And even after a new school is built, the new growth beyond that capacity will all go to PTR, because the new space doesn't have room with the wetlands to grow with portable. So we see that solution as a need every step of the way as we start to grow and move forward. So that's why I think you haven't heard that now, but I do believe that without that solution, you will continue to get that, because I don't know that there's enough milk crates to make whatever we can do to serve 1,000 kids in an adequate time.
Well, so we're not hearing about recess or PE and lunch and some of the other, how do we share all the specialists? we're not hearing about those.
Not yet, we made a move, and part of the capacity issue that led to PTR is we took one less classroom at Ording Elementary, so the stage could be
Right.
for music. That's helped us solve some of the concerns that we had in that regard, but keep in mind, we have no more space for early learning. We have no more space at Ording Elementary. We have no more space at Ording High School, and that's at the current capacity we have. High school, before new elementary be built, will be about 1,100, 1,150. That's why in your model you see temporary space. And as we know, the only two places are either the main parking lot, which there is law, we're about to go to an audit, and the audit requires one parking space for every 8 children and one for every adult. And we don't have adequate space for who we have today. So all of this plays into the story and your consideration of where you go. As the CFAC shared with us, we have a big list of needs, and we don't have enough dollars or resources currently to address them even all today. So, but we will build a plan based on where you go that helps us move in the best way possible.
Not to change that completely, but what has happened with, because we were talking parking lot out in the fields, right? And how's that going?
Good question. We have, I would call it a thumbs up from the city to expand some parking. We do not have an agreement with the owner of the parcel yet. However, we have an appraisal in hand, so in your update tomorrow, you'll get a little bit more to that information. And then as long as you're still approving, I'll be reaching out to see if we can have a conversation about purchase or lease. I'm still operating under that presumption. But because we own property adjacent and are surrounding that, we still have the ability to move forward. It's just a little bit easier if we're not routing pathways in or through wetlands, because that could be a hangup for us down the road.
Right.
So, but it's moving forward.
I'm curious, curious, so if we're supposed to, by law, have a 30-minute lunch and we're not, what does that mean? So we're not following the law, so what happens?
Well, I don't know, but there comes, in my mind, like the thing about construction code, there's new codes, but you can't meet them all with what you have.
Yeah, so
So
what
you
are
do
they-
the best you can with what you have.
So we don't get fined or anything?
I don't know of any fine or any shutdown or anything that happens, but I think meeting the spirit as best as we can would be in our best interest. And I do believe without action in that facility, the complaints will come back someday. I don't have a better way to advise you on a solution.
And I kind of feel like the weather's really good right now, so that makes life a little easier. When it's raining and nasty out, then
You may hear from your high school feedback, because we are having lunch all over the place outside, and it hasn't been an issue, but it will be.
And-
I flinch when I think of the portables. Today, all the kids were outside and playing catch and enjoying their lunch, sitting on the grass, and we're about to drop a box on the grass.
And Joanne, I was going to say OPS, at OES, we have not been in compliance with playground space for years and years and
Yes,
years.
it does.
So,
Okay. Well, I remember Michaela saying last meeting that they were sitting in the hall. Remember, she was saying they were sitting in the hall, they were on the floor in class, and I mean, it was miserable for them.
All right, so speaking of space,
Do you want me to just click through the scenarios again, or do you just want to look at the list of projects?
yeah, I'd like to start with a list of projects. So some of the decisions, if I could just check off new elementary school, as that has to be a part of every package. We're all in agreement on that. I'm looking for a wink and a nod from everyone. Kathy? So new elementary school, given. We've got 2 versions of the high school, the cafeteria expansion, and portables to talk about. I want to make sure, before we talk about those, the property purchase debt, that's a decision on our part, not a requirement that has to be in this bond.
Correct. I believe we have enough impact fees to continue to pay that, should you decide not to include that. But if you approved whatever package, I would not want to pay that until I knew what our bids came in for the major construction, because until you, Liz taught me this, until you got out of the ground, you have lots of exposure. Once you get out of the ground, you're pretty safe. So I would not want to do that until I knew we were pretty safe.
Okay. So what you're telling me is we don't really have to make a decision on that, it kind of depends on where we land?
Yep.
Okay, and if we have money, then that's an opportunity for us.
That's an opportunity. If you were going in that midpoint, this is me personally, I like the 115 number better than the 117 number. I don't know why I like that better, but if you were going in that package 3 scenario, that's what I would work with the team to see, okay, where do we pinch and skimp and try to get to just a smidge lower. 115 feels lower.
Yeah.
And just on the pinching and skimping, part of that is just deciding on a state match allocation. So
Right.
once we have better clarity, then we're gonna go, okay, let's recheck our state match numbers based on what you guys kind of are leaning towards.
Just a brief anecdote on that. Currently, state match is around $250 per square foot. There's been a lot of discussion at the state because the actual construction costs, particularly in the western side of the state, are closer to about $650 per square foot. So there's been a press and a push and I believe movement from what we heard today from OSPI and the state looking at a higher matching rate. So by the time this all dust settles, we could see some movement there, which would be helpful. Matt may know more than I, but that is a talking point because the match is insufficient.
If we come down, because I couldn't remember, I think that 5 million stayed, did it stay from 89 million?
Yes,
on
I
up?
left
Okay.
it, I left it the same.
Okay, so it's not gonna lessen because we're going at 115 or 110 or
Well,
whatever.
it could adjust a little bit.
It could adjust a little,
I didn't
okay.
run those numbers, so if you're, last time we were somewhere around 12-ish to 13-ish million, somewhere in that range. And we had said, let's allocate 7, so we have some buffer. So this time I just dropped it a little bit without trying to recalc depending on what scenario you're gonna go with. But we will absolutely recalc so we know, and then you can decide on what percent to allocate.
Can we talk about, I'm trying to kind of knock off the things that were,
CTE.
okay.
I mean, this here showed safety is security, that's big. We need to keep that.
Yeah, when we talked, you explained it's for OMS, PTR, any buildings that are going to remain in operation. So we're not gonna be paying for safety and security for a building we're gonna, because I don't want to put any more money in a building we're about to get rid of.
Right.
No,
And it didn't have the high school, right?
it did not have a high
Okay,
school
that's what I
touch
thought.
that would the new facilities at high school would be comparable because they would be built to a new standard. It's not redoing existing HVAC at an existing building.
But we get some AC at the middle school,
PTR.
PTR, both of which we've all agreed they desperately need that. So we're gonna provide healthy learning environments for our kids where we actually expect them to learn and not sweat it out. Then that's important. And then key card access.
Keyless controls at PTR and
And
middle.
I think double entrance,
And a
right?
dual entry
That's-
vestibule at
That's
PTR.
That's huge.
Okay, so everybody's thoughts on that? Melissa, including that in the package? I'll start with you.
So I'm just going to apologize, this is not the best way to be a participant in a board meeting.
It's okay.
I can hear just about every other word.
Okay.
So I'm just going to tell you what all of my thoughts were. I think from the things that I was hearing, I'm pretty much on the same page that you were just talking about, Carrie, that from bond scenario number 3, the items on there are the new Ording Elementary School, the high school edition version 1, cafeteria expansion, and the safety, security, health updates. Those are my 4 must-haves.
Okay,
And I'm not really, I guess, in favor of adding a whole bunch of other stuff to that. I don't mind anything that's on version number 3. But just not the best method to participate effectively, I'm afraid, so.
that's okay, I appreciate that, thank you. Thank you, well, we could start with scenario 3. that's helpful.
So the big difference between bond scenario 1 and 2, no, version 1 and 2 are the gym, is the gym.
Yeah,
Okay.
PTR,
So
high school.
if we pick one, then.
This has safety and security in it, which includes safety and security at PTR, but there's no addition.
Right.
So that's
Oh,
in scenario 1. In scenario 2, you have the addition. And so the cost that's listed here of a little over 6 million, that's for the addition part. The safety security part at PTR is in the safety security number. That way it can just be there for every scenario.
okay. All right, so if we go so elementary school was must-have, portables, I don't think there's a way around the high school portables. CTE, which is high school version 1, I think that came back from our survey feedback as something that everybody was on board with. The gym, while we need the gyms, that created controversy. We didn't get a lot of support around that.
That's in version 2.
Yeah, that's
Gym-
that's
one
in version 2.
In version 2.
Replacing,
There's no gyms in version 1.
Okay, okay.
Version 1 is 100% CTE inside.
Okay.
And we can work on how to, what to
Terminology.
call
Yeah,
it
yeah.
and
yeah,
terminology.
no, I know,
Yeah.
I just,
Like,
Do you want to go back to the project list?
scenario 3, if you don't mind.
Yeah, of course. Okay.
So, kind of basing this on what Melissa said, we're good with the new elementary, the portable classrooms, I understand that to be kind of not optional at this point. High school edition version 1 speaks to the CTE requests that we got continually loud and clear, they wanted CTE classroom space. The PTR cafeteria is something I want you guys to weigh in on whether or not we want to keep that in the package. Safety and security, I'm hearing that as a must-have. And then property purchase debt, we'll do that if we can. State matching funds are just, they are what they are. So what I'm hearing is that we need to talk a little bit more about the cafeteria at PTR and the gym at OHS.
I'm gonna say that I think that cafeteria is critical that we have that.
Kathy, what are your thoughts?
like I said, I'm really concerned that if we don't do something about the high school gym situation,
Wait, we're talking about the cafeteria.
okay.
So let's talk about that one.
Oh, I thought you said both of those
No, no,
things
no.
to talk
I
about.
just want to know what your thoughts are on the PTR cafeteria.
Quite honestly, I cannot pick between that and the high school gym, so
Okay? Okay,
that, I'm just gonna be honest.
that's fine, that's fair. Joanne, what about you? Thoughts on PTR cafeteria?
I mean, we definitely have to have it. After working there 5 years, I know what goes on there, and it gets so crazy over there, and that increases all of our behaviors, it increases anxiety in kids and in staff. I just don't see how we can say no to that. I mean, the impact that it would have to not do it, I think it would just be too much.
Okay. And Melissa, that was not in your critical top 4.
It was, I actually did say, I have it listed on here as a must. It was
Okay.
kind of my concession towards compromise from our last meeting. Trying to, because I do still have some concerns about the wording and how we word it. Because we're still going to need to do work at PTR at some point, even if we do this one particular piece. So I think it's going to be important that it doesn't look like we're trying to double dip projects in the
Right.
future, if that makes any sense.
Yep, yeah. I have concerns around that too, the wording of it. I don't want people also to think that we've just renamed the gym, the cafeteria, so I'm really
Right.
nervous about that. Just knowing the growth that's coming to that school, I feel like it's a must-have. I can't imagine a workaround for that many kids without that space. So for that reason, I'm on board with that cafeteria expansion also. Okay, so now if we can talk about the high school gym. And while I think we really need it, again, you don't have to sell, don't feel like anybody needs to sell me on needing any of this. I heard from the community that they don't want to pay for gym space, that the classroom space is such a bigger priority. So begrudgingly, my vote would be to stick with version 1 and not do version 2.
So I'm assuming that scenario 4 is like out.
I didn't say that.
Okay.
So Mike, what are your thoughts on the high school gym?
This one's tough, because I look at it and I know it's fallen, and, so it's really, I look at it, and this is what scares me, is we're not gonna get it in this one if we take it out, right? And there's no guarantee that it's coming on the
Sorry,
next
can
one.
you clarify that? We're not gonna get, say that.
So if we eliminate and we go with version 1, right, we don't have the gym. And we think down the road, we're gonna bring it in the next bond that's gonna pass. And we're going for that one. How long are we kicking that down the road to get that gym to the point that it's usable and someone's not gonna get hurt? So that's where I have an internal fight that's going on. I do understand, and I get it, that we need to lessen this so that we're getting the people on board in our community. And they did say, right, hey, sports are way down on the list. So I'm okay, and I'm good with version 1. I'm a little bit nervous about the second bond and how long that's gonna take.
Yeah.
I had a question, and you're the only one that knows this question. So, when I was looking at between version 3 and version 4, and I was looking at, the CTE classrooms being there on OES's playground building, while the kids are still in that building, and all of a sudden I realized, and I don't have a cursor or a map or anything. No, I wouldn't be able to do it. I'm not, but you might be able to do it. So, if you go to 4, I'm just going to show you something that I told Ed about this. But the map.
Oh, the map version,
The map.
yes, okay, let's do that, okay. Whoops, sorry. Here, okay?
Yes. Okay. So, Joanne's going to know what I'm talking about. You will too. So, behind the old gym, there's a bunch of space between that there and this building. And every time you start a new building, so there you have 2 separate building areas, that adds to some of the costs. So I wondered why we weren't adding some classrooms behind the replacement of the old gym there.
Sure.
CTE classes in a 2-story building that's part of that site. So that would reduce some of the costs. It's sort of like this compromise that I've been playing around with in my head. Because right away I went, oh, that would get the construction off the playground while they're still in that building. But the other was, we're not utilizing that space back there. And we could have, CTE classes there.
So,
Do you wanna go ahead?
yeah, I can talk about that. So,
It was just, I told, like I said, that I'm not an architect, I don't know. It was just a question because I saw there's a space, it's not the playground,
that,
might reduce some costs, I don't know.
you should ask the question, that's great.
Well,
I'm
I
glad
did.
you did. So, part of the thinking, it's twofold. One, when we did a number of studies looking at master planning this,
Right, right.
this property, we kind of said the academic parts of the function, I'm gonna just walk up from the
No, I
screen
didn't-
point,
And
are
I
going
remember that
to,
conversation, yeah.
are gonna kind of shift their weight, so to speak, this direction.
Right,
Right? Okay, so that's one consideration. So if you build these spaces here, you're kind of putting yourself at the very farthest end of that property, which you could do, and you could make it work. The second thing is, in that master plan, we had space for other athletic facilities that we had kind of reserved this space for. And that was specifically locker rooms. If you remember, we had said, we have a need for more locker rooms too, because you have so many more kids and stuff like that. So there's other PE and athletic functions, and so we had said, that's a good spot for it. So those are some of the key drivers. The other driver that I don't know if we would find a solution, or we might, but is just sort of access in back here. In the long, long range, when this building goes away, then you have more flexibility there. So there's kind of different layers. In terms of if you said, if the board said, we really do want to move forward with version 2, that would be studied again when we do the real design. At this stage of the game, most of our, I don't think we would make much of an adjustment to the price to include in the bond for that version. But if you said, yep, we put that on the ballot, it passes, we're moving forward, we would 100% study that version of the design, because everything we've studied so far, we'll study again in the next level of detail after the bond passes to make sure we're making the right decisions. Is that?
no, I
Did I
understand
answer
all
your
those
question?
things, I guess, Mike, the reason why I came up with it is I was trying to come up with some kind of compromise that met both of the needs that Mike was talking about, about the gym, and which, according to state law, PE is a required class, and so, it's not like an optional thing, and providing more CTE classes, but maybe not quite as many. I was trying to find a way, like I said, I'm real concerned if we don't have something with the gym, that we're gonna shoot ourselves in the foot for the next time around, when they go, well, what are we gonna do? We don't have a gym. We gotta work on both those gyms. So,
How many portables is that adding when we say addition of portables for 1.5 million?
We figured without putting portables out in front of the Performing Arts Center, we have space for 7. 7 double portables, that's the max space. 3 behind, adjacent and around where the current ECAP building is, and 4 we believe we can fit in the main parking lot. The 4 in the main parking lot would take away 66 parking spaces. The mid parking lot, we have reserved and are planning for the temporary location of the 6 portables if you pursue construction of high school in a version 1. If you don't want that, then we can put those portables in that middle parking lot, or additional portables, if you don't touch the high school at all. But
And that's between the sign and the traffic light, right?
sign and traffic light, yep, we can put 4 double portables, 8 classrooms worth. So 7 portables, you figure 30 kids max, that's 200 spaces. That gets us close to what we think the projected capacity would be before Ording Elementary moves.
right, so you have, if you remember, there's that period of time before the new elementary gets built that you have a real challenge of, and that's where we need to deal with that. From a budget perspective, what we did is we just said, 6 portables at $250,000 a pop, 1.5 million. Now, in the end, you hope you can get more than that, which is kind of the space studies that Ed was just talking about. And, you know, because do you lease them, do you buy them, all those things. So we just kind of put what sounds like a crazy number for a portable, but they're actually very expensive to get in place and hook up and everything, so. That's what how we came up with 1.5 million.
So Joanne, your thoughts on, wait, Kathy, was that, you're good on, or you share?
Yeah, no, I said, yeah, that was just, like I said, I was trying to come up with some kind of compromise to get something between 3 and 4, without bumping it up to the price of 4, so, yeah.
All right, Joanne, your thoughts on,
I don't know why, but my mind just keeps going to, what is the huge difference between 117 and 137 as far as monthly payments and as far as all of that? I just feel like if we don't do that gym now, I don't know when we'll have a gym, because it's hard enough just to pass one bond. I don't see us in the near future passing another bond. Just be honest, I just don't see it. So, I mean, I will go with you guys, if you want the 117, I'll go with that, but I just feel like, I don't know, I'm trying to weigh my responsibility to the citizens of Orting and my responsibility to the kids. And it's hard to do that because they don't match right now. And so, you know, that's.
So what was the difference between the 117 and the 137?
$7.91 per month. I will probably say that logic will not prevail at the poll.
I understand that, but I wanted to know.
But it's minimum, it's a cup of coffee, maybe 2. It's not a lot of difference in the bottom line. It's what number will, and what package will resonate.
What number and what
will get
description,
you over
yeah.
the hump.
Melissa, you've spent a lot of time in our gyms at the high school. Do you have any comments to add?
I do. And I will just say, Joanne, the one thing that you said there that I would like to have on a banner right now is the fact that our priorities to our students versus our community don't match up. They are not aligned for whatever reason, and I don't know how that changes. But when it comes to the gym activity and doing any gyms, I'm opposed to it. Not because it's not needed, not because it's obviously learning space. I know all about what's going on there. My problem with it is putting bond scenario 4 out to the voters looks way too much like the previous one that we did. There's nothing of substance that the voters are going to miss. It kind of proves Trevor's point from earlier that just says, see, I told you they could do it for less. They didn't need that much money in the first place because they're still going to see a gym. There's obviously big things that they won't see, but the main part of that, I feel like that's just the mixed message. And then again, we're going to have to come back and ask for more money for gym space at a later date. And I personally, I can't go into this thinking that we're not going to get support for another round, whether we do it in 5 years, 6 years, or whatever that takes. We're going to have a whole bunch of new community members that will be voting. And I really do think that holding off on the gym portion of the high school gives our Valley voters a real good reason to support that next bond measure when it affects their high school that all the students go to.
That's a really good
I
point.
also think the difference between 117 and 137 when you break it down by dollars and cents sounds minuscule, which just takes me back to the idea of how it looks. The perception is everything, and so I just feel like it's just too close.
Okay. And were we talking a little bit about sending out a survey asking what they thought about if we took away this, and this, and how the community thought? I mean, you know, like, if we take away the gym, or if we take away CTE. I mean, I'm just wondering if we want that input or no.
Don't we really have that?
Yeah.
That's kind of what I feel like.
I feel
I feel like that's what this
I
is.
don't feel like this was a real representation of our community. There's a lot more people in our community, and it was kind of on the back. It was hard to see. I mean, I had a lot of people tell me they didn't do it, and I don't know. So that's where I struggle. You know, I can look at that and I can say, oh yeah, that's what they said. But how many people are there in our community? How many people are there in Ording? And how many people did the survey?
Hey, Trevor,
Yes, sir.
other in the state, because you were saying numbers with others that you were seeing, right? Is that kind of like the trend that's out there? Is athletics are down, and do you know?
Athletics have never polled well. They are always at the bottom of the list.
But I don't think that's talking about.
Which is
athletics.
crazy, because I think the stadium
Oh,
being
it's,
on
I
there
don't
is
believe
what
it.
made that
Yeah.
pass,
If you
right?
look at how many people were at Enumclaw Ording game the other
Yeah,
night and
yeah.
talking about the turf and everything, yeah, I don't know, it's weird.
And that's statewide, right? Your community could be vastly different.
Well, I'm not even looking at it as much for athletics as I am for classrooms and
Right.
that,
Yeah.
you know. But if the majority wants 117, I'll go the 117.
So I'll go back to your question about, do we want to ask the community?
We might not even have
We
time.
had, like, when you look at the journey of our bond conversation, we've had multiple town halls and surveys and CFAC and bond surveys and bond town halls. And,
We'd almost have to practically go door to door.
yeah, and even then, because we did go door to door.
I mean, to do the survey.
But we did, we did go door to door
Yeah.
and invite people to vote and,
Yeah.
so you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink.
Yeah.
And so I think the people who are invested and cared chimed in, and I absolutely agree. I would like a wider, a much more robust voice from the community, but I don't know how much more we can ask
Yeah.
and get
I'm
different.
just nervous that we're
I believe what,
asking the wrong thing and we're still even gonna know.
I don't know that, but the sample size across the state of Washington was 500 when we went to Piper Sandler's presentation last week. And if that's the sample size to develop a conjecture across the state, 339 for our local population is probably a reliable sample size for us to get. There's probably some statistical variance, okay, if you got another 600, but it's probably pretty close to the pulse, I would suspect, based on the presentation they conducted.
Yeah, that's a pretty big sample size.
I'll go with the 117.
I want the gym
I
as
know,
much as
I know.
anyone. I really appreciate what Melissa said about it looking too close to our original bond package. So I'm leaning towards that 117. Mike, what are you leaning
Yeah, I'm
towards?
leaning 117.
And scenario 3?
Yeah.
And Melissa, you're still on scenario 3?
Let me be clear, that's not what I want, that's just
Right.
what I'm supporting right now.
Yeah, we're in agreement. I'm the same. I want all of it yesterday.
I want the original 150.
Yeah,
Right.
we did. That we didn't go into that decision lightly,
Nope.
and we made it multiple times, and still came to that same conclusion. But right now, if I had to choose between the high school gym and not getting these other things because that was on the ballot, then I need more for our kids sooner rather than later. To be more years down the road before we get that new elementary school. So, Kathy, I know the high school gym's important. But
Well,
where's your,
Okay, like I said before, so what is the plan then when we have to do all the high school gyms at once? What do we, the second time around, what do we do? Just only do the old one then, and then have that gym be the whole thing? I'm trying to understand, because one of the things for me is that this really has to go into a long-term plan, because that was one of the things that I originally ran on, because we had none. And so I'm really concerned about, one, having a plan, and two, making it so that the plan works instead of just going, oh, let's go with this. And I'm not saying we're saying, let's just go with this. I'm just saying, so what do we do then?
Conceptually, the way the numbers would probably drive, if that holds, package number 2, bond 2 at some point would be a elementary school into Holly, paired with a high school, just a little bit larger high school chunk than we envisioned before. We were thinking bigger bond 1, a little bit smaller bond 2. Now it'd be a little bit smaller bond 1, a little bit bigger bond 2. And so part of the planning would draw that together to figure out
Okay,
what
but
that would
that's
look
not actually the question. The question is, what do we do about having a gym while we're doing all that? Because that would be all the high school gyms at once.
So previously, when we were planning on doing both gyms in the previous bond, we were planning on doing both. We're gonna stage the construction of both of those so that you're never without a gym. It's still, no matter what, the construction's kind of challenging, but it definitely can work. So we would do the same thing in the future with in the way that Ed was just describing in terms of a larger package. And those kind of things are gonna be true for a lot of different work you do on the high school, because
Yeah.
there's, buildings all over the place, and we have to kind of just build in chunks. But that's how we would do it. We would stage it. We would build one gym before tearing down the other, tear that down, build the next one in sequence within one construction project.
Okay, and then my other question, which doesn't have to do with my vote, it has to do with, so what will we do now about it?
That's, right now, we don't have a solid way to increase gymnasium space and decrease the length of time each night that athletes are practicing to rotate into that. And the other challenge we would have to figure out is, how do we make the space that just became unusable a week and a half ago usable? And I don't have an answer for that at this table, because there's some research we have to do. But we really can't afford to keep that offline because we're tight on space already. High school may have to look to using the OPS space for practice, or we have to figure out how to fix the floor again. We've done that a few times.
I think they were having practice in when you walk in that little, the entryway there last year. It's like, that's how bad it is.
yeah.
Our kids don't get regular practice. They don't get practice like other districts do, because we don't have any room. That's the reality. I mean, it makes me mad, but there's nothing we can do.
But there is. We can do a lot. We can.
No, I'm talking about the practice.
Yeah. Okay.
And I would never, I'm telling you my thoughts, I would never be the one vote out, so I'm just,
It's okay to be well, we
No,
don't
no,
always.
I'm looking at you for a reason. I look at Melissa for another reason, but you know what, I'm not gonna do that,
Yeah.
okay?
Is there any, I think another important thing, is there any important, or any questions or information that you feel like you would need either from our architects or from Trevor? Questions on the numbers? So,
Thanks for coming and telling us all that.
yeah, I think that's really helpful. I appreciate the refresh on the numbers and kind of dialing that in. I hate that it's only 5 million on the state match.
Well, we can
We're
examine
gonna-
that a little bit more
Yeah.
Fingers crossed,
closely.
Yeah.
we're gonna take it now we know what we have to analyze with
Yeah.
this scenario, so.
So you guys, so in terms of your decision-making, there's nothing more that you need from,
No, I was just wondering if we're gonna drop down, if we don't need that payoff for the land, should we drop to 115?
that's to be determined? Is that a right way?
When will we know that? Probably not.
Before,
No later than the 2nd of November.
yeah, we would know that beforehand.
We're gonna do some exploration on a couple of things and really make sure the assumptions are good. And once we know that, we'll be able to share that offline, and also work with legal to draft a resolution for your review, so.
I don't know, does 115 sound better than 117? I don't know.
It's
It
a
might.
de minimis amount, in my mind it does, I might be the only one at this table that thinks that sounds a little better.
And it's not like we're losing something really important.
That's what we would want to know, because we can't run too tight. We run
Right.
too tight and we don't deliver something we promise, well, I'd
Yes.
rather be at 117 than not deliver.
Yes.
So that's the work that we will figure out.
And if in some magical math way, you find an opportunity, maybe to address a high school gym, I'm still really reluctant to include that in the bond package, but if there, I would want this board to know, I just want to know all the options. So, to me, this is all the options, and I can get behind scenario 3, and I'm a sales manager, so I can sell that. I can sell that to the community with confidence and clear belief that it's possible for our district. And I can't, for me, I can't back a high school gym if it means sacrificing any other of these things. So that's why I want to do version 1.
We have to have that new elementary school to create capacity in both elements. That's the number one. If I was to put anything on the table, that's what you can't afford to lose. So whatever you consider, if it's the most likely scenario to get that to happen, that unlocks our ability to meet the growth.
And it's, just to be clear, our decision could be we're only going to put a new elementary school on the
Could
bond
be.
package. Like, it doesn't have to be this big package. I don't want to go back to square one. I'm not suggesting that, but this is the decision that the board is going to have to support, that we're including this depth of
The
project.
CTE,
Yeah, the CTE.
that's really the driver here.
Yeah. And the portable classrooms, the community voted in favor of portables by not passing the bonds. And I hope I said that loud enough.
I was gonna say, love those portables.
Yeah,
You're correct, we can't solve that portable issue without a higher price point.
yeah. Okay, so scenario 3, please.
We will take some additional work and steps, sharpen pencils, communicate that to you as well, see if we can beat that number or stay at that number. That we will figure out in the next couple weeks so that we can try to have a final version ready to go to legal about mid-month. And then November 2nd, we'll bring that back to you and likely talk about engagement work that the board would like to do or consider between then and February. If presuming that's the time frame you still want to be on, I would presume so. We can meet that. So we'll
Yeah,
talk
we
about
did
how
talk,
to engage.
yeah, we did talk about February versus November. I think everybody was on board. I'm looking for affirmation for February.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay,
Special guest, thank you.
yes, thank you.
Yeah, our pleasure.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Liz.
Thank you.
Great discussion.
Sorry.
That was the polite way of saying you're more than welcome to leave. it.
We're only reviewing 24 policies.
There's a
and
whole
procedures
lot of
tonight.
policies.
very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And do, Kathy, I really do appreciate your creative, thank you, Trevor. Problem solving. So if you have more questions and more ideas, there's still time to noodle those. This isn't set in stone, so.
Yeah, I'm just, like, so, when you get to the point where you've made the decision, but you're not ready to say it out loud, and you're still
Yes,
hoping
yes, yes.
you can come up with something.
Yeah, and I still, you had mentioned the long-range plan and having a vision for our future, and in my mind, I haven't heard a compelling reason to deviate from that long-range vision. So even if we're going for the single bond at this time, that long-range plan still exists, and those ideas for those plans are still on the table for me as long as I'm here.
No, I know, the one thing I kind of wonder is, now that the reality has hit the community that uses this gym,
Yeah,
what their thoughts are.
yeah, yeah. And
You know.
what they're willing to do to get all their friends out to vote.
Yeah.
And I have a sneaking suspicion, I have a theory why it's been kind of quiet and not, because now the community knows that we're not opposed to asking them to fund a solution. So things are kind of quiet. They're not talking about the cafeteria space. Even overcrowding has gotten a little bit quiet since our bond.
It's early.
Yeah, it's early, yeah. Everybody's gonna be indoors now, so,
But I do think we need to really show them like where they're practicing
oh yeah.
and what's happening to them. Our kids, they aren't getting this much practice. I think we have to be tougher on what our realities are this time.
Yeah.
Well, for some of them, the reality kind of hit them. I mean, if they can't practice in it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, they can't park,
No.
they can't, yeah, it's gonna be tough.
Anyway,
Okay. Next item on our agenda is the General Assembly position prioritization. So Melissa, for this, I will turn it to you.
Well, gee, thank you. I wish I was there in person because I really want to make this quick because I think we could spend a lot of time on it if you really wanted to, but I don't think it's necessary. So I did attend that conference. It was a 2-day conference where each district had a vote on, I don't know how many policies. It was a long 2 days. But the point for this tonight is to take all of those priorities that came through and what WASDA is doing and what we as a district want them to focus on for priorities for the upcoming legislative session. So my mind just directly goes to funding, and when I was looking through the list, that's what I focused on. I'm pretty sure Marcy's there somewhere, so as we were talking about
Not
things.
tonight.
Oh, she's not?
Nope.
Oh, darn, okay, it's on it. Okay, so as we're talking about things, then how do they make sense for our district? And when we contribute to WASDA as an organization, there's no way anybody from Morning School District is gonna walk down there to the government buildings and ask them to do certain things. So that's what WASDA kind of does for us. And what do we want them to focus on for our district? What's most meaningful to us? Carrie, lovely Carrie, she was great and got all of hers into me. And then I did that as well. I love that Bonnie put them out on executive content there so that we could see those. Carrie and I had a couple that overlap. I know Kathy said that she was sick and didn't get a chance to actually do that, but.
oh, I did it.
Awesome. So, I don't know if you guys want to run down all of them. There's like 100 and some positions. I don't know that that's worth our time. But just real quick, I'll let you know that Carrie and I both selected equitable funding for regionalization and staff mix. Really, if you want to know exactly what they are, let me know. I can give the definition that's in the position catalog. I have that printed out and flagged, somebody may have to repeat or whatever, because I can not hear everything. Harm come to an individual by the district, a lawsuit comes later. Prejudgment interest would be them assigning interest on the settlement payment back to the date of harm, not the date of
Right,
whatever the decision is made.
yeah.
So having WASDA kind of be in support of not allowing that to happen would be a good thing for all
Yes.
school districts.
Okay.
Yes, when I read the explanation, I didn't get that at all, so thank you.
Yeah.
That's my simplified version.
That's perfectly
That
explained.
was thumbs up for
Yeah.
Med, so, yeah.
Yeah, that would be, that's a lot of financial risk
So
for
I-
the district.
Personally, I think that was an
Yes,
absolute.
I agree, I didn't have it on my list because I really didn't understand what they said in their explanation, but now that I get it, I agree.
Yeah. The equitable funding for regionalization and staff mix, Carrie and I both had that one. Not much to say about that one, it's a pretty simple one.
Mm-hmm.
Melissa, you've got transportation funding, I
Oh.
put technology funding, so either one of those I think are probably on there for the same reason.
I have
Yeah.
I have
The
transportation funding,
It's such a convoluted,
Yeah,
yes.
formula that they use, nobody understands it, so I
Right.
like that when they're talking about it, they're talking about to be transparent and be
yes,
clear, you know,
Yeah.
Yeah.
what exactly is the funding and to make it work.
yeah, I could lean easily towards that as well.
And that's been an issue for us, we've had many
Long time, yeah.
discussions about that.
Yeah.
Nobody can explain it.
Right, right.
Yeah, yeah. I had federal poverty rate calculation. Interestingly enough, when the government decides what the poverty level is for school districts, they use a countrywide formula instead of regional, so this is asking them to make that a regional figure instead of nationwide. I don't know how that necessarily affects us, but that was one on mine.
Well, what is the passage of school finance issues?
That's the simple majority.
Oh, that's the one.
Yeah.
Because she says simple majority, but you're saying the same thing.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's the same one.
I didn't see until I went through to read Carrie's that was where the simple majority was. For simple majority, I'm like, where is it?
So that one we want to, so.
Yeah, passage of school finance.
Want
is
to
the
keep
one.
that, yeah.
Yeah,
So, the only different one is, Melissa has levy authority and local effort assistance. I don't see you.
Yeah, I didn't have that one.
I didn't either.
She's put two LEA ones. And I had the amply funded staffing levels, so I don't know which would have the bigger benefit to our district.
So I'm really not sure what the
From these,
To be honest, I have 5 more to go.
okay, okay. I know.
If you want to just send me any questions you have, and,
Oh, yeah,
okay,
yeah, yeah.
that we can still move them forward, because I think we're pretty good.
It was,
Yeah, that was awesome, let me tell you.
That's a lot of readings.
Sorry, I'm reading through.
Very dry, too.
Oh. You didn't find it riveting? I mean, cabinet, where they were just so excited.
Very lawyery.
Well, and I haven't been feeling good, and all I wanted to do was sleep and be warm, so I'd start to read those. and
Oh,
I'd
you
go,
were
"Oh,
dozing
yeah."
off, yeah, definitely.
Which is safe.
So that's why I got 5 more to go, because I
Yes, I
took naps.
understand.
That must be it.
yeah, I think it
Yeah.
is.
Brutal. I got down to like a few and I'm
Joanna and I
like,
are
how many
looking
pages?
for-
Yes, exactly.
We did,
Exactly.
we did have a
What do we
question
ever
last
want?
night, so I didn't get a chance to ask in the beginning, but, or earlier. There is one in here that's specific to hiring women in leadership positions, and I apologize, I'm not remembering which one it was.
Is it 50-10? Where they talk about the goals of having female administrators? And
Yes,
it's part of the-
Non-discriminatory.
yes, non-discriminatory
It's part of the
affirmative.
stricken
Yeah,
Yeah.
area. That's,
Yes,
in part because like neighboring districts, it isn't common for people to put that within the policy, but it isn't that we aren't paying attention to it. And every other year, we pull the data. We last pulled it in 2022, it was September 30th, and we use that data in a 2-year cycle to monitor where we're at with regard to goals. But narrowly looking at it in the policy like that just tells us what, it doesn't tell us how. And I think we have a greater opportunity to have within our affirmative action plan within the district. We can say not only how we have the opportunity to get there, but what we would do to meet that. So we can be more fully descriptive, I guess, in
yeah.
reviewing the plan.
So,
And
so could we pull that one out of this and look at it a little further?
pull it out as far as it not be stricken.
Sorry, no.
What policy?
Instead of moving the policy and procedure forward to second reading, keep it in first reading so we could look at it more deeply, because we were talking about briefly last night, and I'd just like to look,
Yeah.
I read it,
The
I
way
read
you
it
read
quickly
just
in the
kinda
batch of all the other
sounded
ones.
weird.
Yeah.
Sure, that makes sense. I also want to share with you that the last time that we updated this, we did a similar thing so that we could look at that data separately from it just being part